Okay, my talk's more of a programmer's focus, so I'm sorry if I bore half the audience, but you should still find it interesting. Some of the performance tips I'm going to go through are ActionScript specific, which is the Flash programming language, but will also come into play with other languages. Ooh. So I tested not with a stopwatch, but with actually a nice test script by Grant Skinner. And you always need to install the standard Flash player because the debug Flash player will not run the same performance as a normal Flash player. Woohoo. So, first one, basic loop performance. The number B, which we're kind of doing a red versus blue theme, is how you see most for loops declared. If you actually take the variables out of your for loop, you get that much difference in your performance. Because what is actually happening in your for loop is you're redeclaring your iterator in ActionScript, and you're also looking up the array to get the length. So, never thought there was a difference between divide and times. It's a minuscule difference, but you can actually times by 2.25 is actually quicker than dividing when it moves on. So, it's not that much of a difference, but when you have lots and lots of loops, or if you're trying to do some mathematical calculations, you'll find that even timesing by a number will be faster than dividing. This is an ActionScript specific issue, but when you hide and show objects on your stage, you can either add child them, remove child, which will take them off and on your stage, and you can set their visibility. And quite a few programmers I've seen just add and remove. Say you've got a slideshow and you're adding and removing. That's the difference. Because what's happening is that when you're adding and removing, you've got to actually look up the display list, work out where it's got to be added to the stage. Collections. So a vector, for those who don't know, is a typed array in ActionScript, and they were introduced in Flash Player 10, and an array is just a standard array. So when you put data into that array, it actually turns out that putting data into a vector takes longer than putting it into a standard array, but pulling data out of a vector goes a lot quicker than pulling it out of an array. And so if you have the chance to use Flash Player 10 and you're constantly pulling stuff out, then it's probably best to be using your typed vectors. And in case you're curious about the dictionary format, I ran those against the tests as well. Your dictionary is always going to be slower, but a little bit more powerful in object pulling out. So, this neat thing that you can do in ActionScript that you can't do in many other languages is you can actually you can insert data not at the first point of the array. You can insert it halfway through the array at point 100 or point 1. And what actually happens, though, is the algorithm to run those arrays takes a lot longer. So if you're ever doing high-performance ActionScript, always make sure you put stuff into your array in the correct order. Now, this goes for any language. If you're ever casting between two variables, just be careful. Quite often you'll have a number and you need to display that on screen. And so in 10 different spots on your screen, you're going to say this number becomes a string on the screen and display it in different spots. But every time you're doing that, it actually has to convert the string through to the number through to a string, and actually increases your performance. And there's this always debate between the number format and the int format. And so ints are basically numbers without decimals. So when you're working with ints, they're great for iterators, but as soon as you have to cast it to be a number, so as soon as you start dividing an int and it becomes a number, it's doing that same cast performance. And so there's not that much of a difference, but when you're trying to get the most out of your script, just be careful when you're trying to divide ints because it turns them into numbers, or if you're timesing by math.random. And my final one is often you will need to declare a new point or a new rectangle in part of your calculation, and most of the time you don't actually think about it and you just do it in line in your code. But often, 0, 0, new point, you may as well declare that up the top, because every time you need to create that new variable, you're impacting on your performance.